Nowadays, sacrifice is rare. A woman who had everything told me once that having children is a dizzying bother. She couldn't be bothered to be a mother. When a mother thinks like that, she becomes useless, for mothers, after all, are supposed to have love naturally. Before having her own family, a young woman may be woken up by her mother at 10 in the morning. But from the moment she becomes a mother and has to feed and bath her child, she won't even sleep at night because the heart starts working. When a person has a sense of sacrifice, he does not complain, he is not lazy, he rejoices. That's the key to have a spirit of sacrifice. If that woman had said, "O Lord, how can I thank you? You have not only given me children, but also many material goods. So many people have nothing and I have houses, I have property from my father, my husband earns a good salary, and I receive 2 more salaries from rents, and I have an easy life. How can I thank you, my God? I'm not worthy of these things." If she thought like this, then by praising God she would stop feeling sorry for herself. In other words, it would have been enough if she had only been grateful to God. Geronda, sacrifice gives us joy. Oh, what joy it brings. Nowadays people don't savor this joy of sacrifice, and this is why they are tormented. They have no ideals in them. They are too bored to live. A generous heart and self-denial are what drive us. Without this force we are tormented. In the old days in the villages, some people would go out at night unseen to quietly open up a pathway for others to bless and forgive them when they died. Now one seldom encounters this spirit of sacrifice. I remember a festive procession around the monastery on the holy mountain. As the monks walked close by a large bramble bush, their monastic veils would get snagged on a branch. Not one of them stopped for a minute to break it off and get it out of the way for the sake of the others behind. Instead, each stooped under it to avoid getting snagged. Were they bowing to the bramble bush? If it were the sacred bramble bush, then it would have been appropriate. People tend to think, let someone else take care of the problem. I'll just do my own work. But why don't you take care of it, since you were the first to notice? That is what worldly people who do not believe in God do. I have no use for such a life. I would rather die 1,000 deaths. The goal is for each one of us to think of the other person, of the other person's pain. People seem to have lost control. The sense of philorimo, of sacrifice, is gone. I have often told you how it was with me, then with the hernia at the KLIPOVI. When someone rang the bell on the door, I would go and open the door, even in the snow. If someone had a serious problem, then I would not even feel my own pain, even though I had previously been sick enough for bed. I would also offer them some treat, holding the treat with one hand and the hernia with the other. Throughout our conversation, even though the pain was severe, I would not lean on anything so as not to reveal my discomfort. When the visitor left, I would again collapse from the pain. It was not there before my own pain had passed or that I had been miraculously cured, but in feeling the other person's pain, I forgot my own. The miracle happens when someone can be compassionate and feel the other's pain. The whole idea here is to be able to see the other person as a brother and feel his pain. It is this very pain that moves God and brings about a miracle, for there is nothing else which moves God as much as a noble and sacrificial spirit. But now in our time, this kind of nobility is rare, because self-love and self-interest have entered the picture. Seldom does someone say, let me give my turn, my place to someone else, and it's all right if I am delayed. Few are those blessed souls who think of others. Even among the spiritual people, there is a contrary spirit, a spirit of indifference. The good is good only when the one who does it sacrifices something from himself, some sleep, some rest, and so on. That is why Christ said, but she of her penury had cast in all the living that she had. When I am at ease and do some good, it does not have the same value. But when I am tired and someone asks me, let's say, for directions and I do it, then it has value. When I have had plenty of sleep and stay up all night with someone who needs help, this does not have great value. And if I am fond of conversation, I may do this in order to enjoy the company and be entertained a little. Whereas when I am tired and make a sacrifice to help someone, then I experience a heavenly joy. It is then that I am bombarded with the blessing of God. When someone is too lazy not only to help others but even to do something for himself, then he can get tired while resting. One who helps rest through tiring himself. One who has the spirit of sacrifice will, for example, if he sees someone physically weak working and tiring himself, tell him, sit down and rest and do the work. The weak person will get physical rest, but the other will experience spiritual rest. Whatever one does, he must do it with his heart, otherwise he is not transformed spiritually. Whatever is done with the heart does not tire us. The heart is like a machine that is charged. The more it works, the more it is charged. You see the chainsaw when it finds a soft log goes whir and stops. But when it finds a hard log, it forces itself, gets overcharged, and really works effectively. And not only when we give, but also when we are about to receive something. Let us not think of ourselves, but let us look to see what will be of some comfort to the other person. Let us not be greedy and insatiable, believing that we are entitled to take all we want, leaving nothing for others. Geronda. Again, it is the spirit of sacrifice that enters into the situation. But in the spiritual life, the whole basis is there. Can you imagine what joy is experienced by the one who sacrifices himself? One cannot even express the joy he feels. Sublime joy emanates from sacrifice. Only when we sacrifice ourselves can we be related to Christ. For Christ is sacrifice. Man can live in paradise from here and now, or he can live in hell. Whoever does good is overjoyed, for he is rewarded with divine consolation. Whoever does evil suffers.